Hey there, it's Lucas Catton, and I wanted to share a quick message. Actually, it's really a thank you. It's a public thank you to Mike Rinder and Leah Remini for having me on their podcast as a guest. Their podcast is called Scientology Fair Game, and it's a follow-up to, sort of a more raw version of continuing the discussion that they had started on their multi-Emmy winning series Scientology the Aftermath, which was on A&E for 3 years, and now all three seasons are available on Netflix. It was just announced recently. So I encourage you to go check out those episodes on Netflix and find out more information. And for a long time, I didn't say much about my involvement in my past, my history with this, and I thought that I could leave some of it behind. And I've tried, and I have. I've left behind a lot of the anger that was involved, a lot of the shame and guilt and things like that. And I wrote about this on my site, a little post yesterday about how that was one of the reasons, sort of the guilt and shame and embarrassment of being sucked into that. And nowadays it's easy that a lot of people can say, well, I never would have fallen for that. There's no way, it's obvious that it's a cult and things like that. Well, 20 something years ago, there actually wasn't as much online, and I was a 20-year-old kid, 21 years old, and looking for a direction. I was looking for a purpose. I was looking for a group to be part of that I thought was going to be doing good things in the world to help other people. And that's actually how a lot of people get sucked into controlling groups like this, is because they have a desire to do good and to help others. So they buy into this purpose of, we're going to somehow save this particular population or the planet or whatever, and it's all very grandiose, and it's funny to look at and laugh at now. But at the time, I believed that. I thought I was doing something good. And most of the information that's available online today, and that's come out in the regular media, and such as Mike and Leah's stuff, and such as Going Clear, both the book and the Emmy-winning documentary on HBO, from the book from Lawrence Wright and the documentary from Alex Gibney. Like, these things helped pave the way and helped to make things very obvious as far as what's happening. And most of this has just come out in the last 12 years or so. So prior to all that, it was very easy for things to be hidden or locked away or that kind of thing. So all that aside, thank you, Mike and Leah, for continuing to have a platform for people to be able to share the abuses, the sinister activities, the harassment, the really terrible things that this group actually does, despite all the things that they pretend to do to help people. And I'm not talking about beliefs, because I don't care about what someone believes in terms of what your faith is. I'm not talking about that at all. What I'm talking about is the actions that are harming people, that are breaking up families, that are stalking and harassing, that are, unleashing, the reason why it's called fair game. They're unleashing, private investigators on people. They're trying to destroy jobs and incomes and all these different things that they do against people who speak out against them, because they don't want their real things to be found out. But guess what? It's too late. It's already out there. It's out there in lots of different places if people take the moment to look. So our episode was really centered around Narconon specifically, which was the rehab arm of Scientology. And, we talked about my involvement and leaving, and what happened since then, and being a witness in multiple investigations, and being a witness for plaintiffs in wrongful death lawsuits against Narconon and Scientology, and all these different things that happened since then that I am actually proud of. I'm ashamed of early parts of it, but I've dropped the actual shame part, because it happened. It was what it was, and without some of those experiences, I wouldn't have been where I am today, and I wouldn't be as strong as I am today, and I wouldn't have the continued drive to want to seek truth in general. And after being in an organization or a group where you are convinced that that you have found truth, and now realizing that any one person who thinks they have the ultimate truth on anything is lying, and if you can't question that, then you need to question where you're in, or what you're involved in. So all this kind of rambling aside, there's a lot of interest in cults again right now. Thankfully, to Keith Raniere from the NXIVM and Executive Success Program cult getting sentenced to 120 years in prison for everything that he created. And part of which, by the way, was based on Scientology. And part of it was based on other things too. But there's terminology and setups and things like that are in there that any person who'd ever had any involvement in Scientology goes, oh my gosh, that's exactly right out of the same L. Ron Hubbard book kind of thing. You can see sort of that thing. And they had Mark Vicente on their podcast. Mike and Leah had Mark Vicente on, who was, a documentary filmmaker who was one of the leaders of NXIVM as well, and became a whistleblower, and was one of the central characters in the HBO series called The Vow. Now there's another one out called Seduced inside the NXIVM cult, and that's with Indian Oxenberg, and that's on Stars, I believe. So there's some renewed interest in there, and there's a lot of there's a lot of similarities, not just with those two, but with controlling groups in general, and how when people are taught that questioning the systems that they've been brought up in, or that the rules that they've been handed down, and that sort of thing, that they're somehow being, anti or negative, or you get punished for it, or how dare you cross party lines, or how dare you do, there's the think that goes along with groupthink and cult mentality is much broader than most people realize. Now, having been in some of the more nefarious side of things, and seeing on the outside of going, wow, I see this type of thing happening in lots of different groups. And I'll probably do something on my own podcast about that. But this has to continue to be brought to light, because just like Keith Raniere going to prison, people in Scientology need to go to prison. People need to be freed. People need to understand what they have been subjected to. And there's a reason why Lawrence Wright named his book Going Clear: Scientology, Hollywood, and the Prison of Belief, because belief is what holds people in to these locked mental prisons. The belief that something bad would happen, or the belief that they're the best, or that they're an elitist organization, or that only they can save the planet, or only this, or only that. That belief is what keeps people stuck. And being willing to look outside of that framework, being willing to talk to other people, being willing to, maybe as Steve Hassan said about, showing people other groups that they go, oh yeah, that's a cult, but what I'm in is not a cult. And you go, well, here's the characteristics of it. And they go, oh yeah, oh wait a second, my group does that too. I'm not allowed to vote against them. I'm not allowed to ask questions in this way. I'm not allowed to associate with certain people who have left. Things like that are absolutely ridiculous, that happen in lots of different places, especially religions, because belief is such a part of it. And because it preys upon people's, usually their innate sense of wanting to do good in the world and wanting to help other people. It's this natural thing that most people want to do. They enjoy helping in some way or another, and feeling like what they're doing has purpose and meaning. And that can come in many different ways. But when you're talking about that, preying on that and using that against people, that's where some of that really insidious behavior comes in, and trying to get people to turn away from their parents and their kids and their siblings and their coworkers, and doing all sorts of really terrible things, to being from dishonesty that leads to death. Honestly, I mean, that's some of the lawsuits that and some of the criminal investigations that I testified in and supplied evidence for was that's what that led to, and some of the episodes on the Aftermath and some of the episodes on Fair Game, you'll see that's what that ultimately leads to, that it's not just some innocent people falling for a belief in some aliens. That's not it at all. That's the way to kind of whitewash it all and belittle it, of going, oh, that's no big deal. There's people that are actively harming other people today. because of that. And so, I'd labeled my little post yesterday about embracing my past, and that's kind of where it came in, is just that, it's not something I can run from. It's something that I don't have to always talk about, but it does come up from time to time. And there are times when it is appropriate for me to take action, and times where it's appropriate for me to send a message to people who might be messing with me or my loved ones and things like that, where, this is not going to be tolerated. And there's actually a lot of other people like me. More people have left than are in it. And if more of them realize that they don't have to be afraid of the organization, that they can speak up, they can share their truth, they can speak out, and they will stand together, and they will ultimately have things like when Keith Raniere was put in jail, prosecuted, and then now sentenced to 120 years in prison the rest of his life. People like David Miscavige need that as well. And if L. Ron Hubbard were still alive, him too. Well, there's lots of other people within their organization that are guilty of crimes as well. And it got pretty big for a while, and it's shrinking because of people like Mike and Leah who continue to share truth. So that's my little soapbox for this. You won't see a lot or hear a lot from me necessarily about this, but I'll certainly continue to talk and share some things when I feel it's appropriate, and definitely to be able to get some points across. So today's election day in the U.S. God bless America. Remember that we are all neighbors. We are all in this together, no matter who wins nor who loses. And please don't fall into the groupthink cult mindset that somehow your neighbor is an evil person for having a different belief than you. Take care. If you'd like, hit me up anytime, lucascatton.com. You can see the podcast posted there. You can also go, as I said, to fairgamepodcast.com. You can go to iHeart Radio, iHeart Music app, I think, and lots of other places. Just check it out. And until next time, have a good one.